Have you ever sat alone, thinking back to moments in your life that still ache, not because of what a stranger did, but because of what someone close to you said or didn't say? Maybe it was a brother who always had a way of making you feel small, or a sister who never missed a chance to put herself first, even when you needed her most. The pain that comes from family doesn't feel like any other pain. It cuts deeper because, well, it wasn't supposed to happen. From the time we're born, we're taught that family is forever. Blood is thicker than water, they say. Siblings are meant to be your built-in best friends, your teammates, your safe place. But what happens when that bond turns into a silent battle? When the very person who was supposed to protect you ends up being the one who undermines you? If you've ever felt that kind of betrayal, you're not alone, and you're not wrong for still feeling it, even after all these years. As we get older, we carry with us a lifetime of memories, some warm, some heavy, and sometimes the heaviest ones are those we were taught to keep quiet about, especially when they involve family. We're told to forgive, to move on, to keep the peace. But here's something worth remembering. Peace isn't something you beg for. It's something you build. And to build it, you have to start with the truth. Today, I want to talk to you heart to heart about something many people are afraid to say out loud. There are some betrayals from siblings that you should never forgive. Not because you're bitter, not because you want revenge, but because you finally respect yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who keep cutting you. These are not little mistakes. These are patterns that shape your self-worth, your relationships, and the kind of life you allow yourself to live from here on out. Let me start by asking you this. Have you ever felt like someone was quietly working against you? Not in public, not in a big dramatic way, but behind your back, in whispers, in suggestions, in little comments that seem innocent, but start to shift how others see you. That's the first kind of betrayal we're going to talk about today, and it's a silent one. Michael was the oldest son in his family, always trying to prove himself to his father, working hard, supporting the family, doing everything right. But no matter what he did, his father always seemed distant, unimpressed. For years, Michael couldn't figure out why. Until one day, he found out that his younger brother, the same one who called him his role model to his face, had been quietly feeding their father stories. That Michael was reckless with money, that he wasn't fit to handle the family business, that he didn't have what it takes to lead. Suddenly, it all made sense. The judgment, the coldness, the way his father looked at him not with trust, but with doubt. And it wasn't because of something Michael had done. It was because of the version of him that someone else had created behind closed doors. That's betrayal. Not loud, not obvious, but real and deep. Wisdom teaches us that we can't control what others say, but we can control what we tolerate. If someone smiles to your face but stabs you when you turn around, you owe them nothing, family title or not. Trust is earned, not inherited. And silence in the face of betrayal is not noble. It's self-betrayal. Sometimes the people who hurt us don't even raise their voice. They just raise doubts, wherever it matters most. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever reached a point in your life where something good finally happened, something you worked hard for, and instead of being celebrated, you were met with sarcasm or backhanded compliments? That brings us to the second betrayal, when your sibling can't stand your success. Rachel had spent years building her career. It wasn't easy. She faced obstacles, doubts, even financial struggles. But she made it. She got promoted to a leadership role, and she felt proud, finally. Her parents were happy for her. Her friends cheered. But her older sister? Just a half smile and a quick, "Don't let it get to your head." That wasn't all. Later, Rachel found out that her sister had been telling their relatives that Rachel was becoming arrogant, too focused on money, not the same person anymore. The same sister who had once borrowed money from Rachel when times were tough, now making her feel guilty for succeeding. This kind of betrayal doesn't come with slamming doors. It comes with quiet resentment, subtle jabs. You got lucky. You've changed. What they really mean is, they're uncomfortable with your growth. Your light reminds them of their own darkness. And instead of doing the inner work, they try to dim you. You should never feel the need to apologize for growing, for becoming stronger, for building the life you always wanted. People who truly love you will rise with you, not try to pull you back down so they feel taller. Brian once said something simple but powerful. People who can't clap for you when you win are not part of your winning circle. That's the truth. You don't need to fight those who resent you. Just keep walking forward. Let their bitterness stay behind you, not beside you. And here's something else to think about. Have you ever had someone use the past against you? Bring up mistakes you made years ago, not to help you grow, but to shame you into obedience. That's the third betrayal. It's not just manipulative, it's controlling. When Brian finally became financially stable after years of hard work, his older brother started reminding him over and over about the time he needed help, the times he was broke, the times he leaned on family. But it wasn't in a loving way. It was always in moments where Brian said no to a request. The message was clear. You owe me. Don't forget where you came from. But here's the thing. You are not the person you were 10 or 20 years ago. No one is the same person they were yesterday. We grow. We evolve. And no one has the right to chain you to your past, especially if they're only doing it to keep you small. If someone constantly brings up your lowest moments to control your present, that's not love. That's leverage. And you have every right to say, that chapter is closed. Let them hold on to the old story. You're busy writing a new one. It's not easy to face these truths, especially when they come from family. But clarity is the first step toward peace. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop making excuses for those who keep hurting you, simply because they share your last name. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe them your pain. What you owe is your own peace. Let's keep going. Because the next kind of betrayal doesn't hide behind whispers or memories. It plays out right in front of everyone, and it cuts you where it hurts most. Imagine being at a family gathering, surrounded by people you've known your entire life. People who, in theory, should be your safe zone. You're sharing a meal, a story, a moment of connection. And then, right in the middle of it, a sibling brings up something you once confided in them. Something personal, something painful. And suddenly the room is filled with laughter, at your expense. That's betrayal in plain sight. When a sibling publicly humiliates you, not out of cruelty that wears a mask, but out of a twisted sense of humor or superiority, it stings in a way that words can't quite capture. They might say they're just joking, that you're being too sensitive. But you know, deep down, it wasn't a joke. It was a moment you trusted them with, turned into a punchline. Emily had been through a rough breakup. She cried, healed, and eventually moved on. One summer afternoon at a family barbecue, she brought along someone new, someone she truly cared about. Things were going well until her younger brother loudly joked, "Remember how you used to cry for hours over that loser ex? You begged him to come back like every day for a month." The people around the table laughed. Emily froze. That wasn't just a comment. That was a betrayal of trust. Her vulnerability used for entertainment. When she brought it up later, her brother brushed it off. "Lighten up," he said. "It's just a joke." But it wasn't just a joke. It was a message, one that said, "Your pain doesn't matter to me. Your privacy is not mine to protect. And I'll get a laugh even if it costs you your dignity." There's a powerful truth to remember here. The person who laughs at your wounds does not deserve a place in your life. It doesn't matter if they're family. If they humiliate you in front of others, They are training the people around you to treat you the same way. You deserve better. You deserve respect. You deserve to be safe at your own dinner table. You don't have to retaliate. You don't have to explain yourself. But you do have every right to set a boundary. To say, this is where I stop laughing. This is where I walk away. Because cruelty disguised as comedy is still cruelty. And sometimes the betrayal doesn't come with jokes or jabs. Sometimes it's the quiet that hurts the most. Silence when you needed anything but. Kevin had worked at the same company for 15 years. He gave it everything he had. Then one day, the rug was pulled out from under him, laid off, relationship ended, and a deep, dark depression followed. His sister lived 20 minutes away. She knew, but she never called, never asked, never said a word. When he finally pulled himself out of that hole and asked her why, she shrugged and said, "I thought you needed space." But Kevin didn't need space. He needed someone to care. A text, a call, a sign that he mattered to someone when his whole world was falling apart. Sometimes betrayal isn't what someone does. It's what they fail to do. It's the absence that screams louder than any argument. It's the realization that, when you needed family the most, they were nowhere to be found. And that silence? It changes things. It tells you who's really in your corner and who's just there when it's convenient. There's a saying worth remembering. Adversity does not build character, it reveals it. The people who show up when it's hard, those are the ones who truly love you. The ones who disappear when you're down. They were never really there to begin with. You don't need to chase people who vanish when the light dims. You don't need to justify your pain to those who never bothered to ask. The people who are meant to stay in your life are the ones who show up, without needing an invitation. And then, there's a betrayal that's harder to name, but no less real. It's when you're not allowed to be anything other than what your family expects you to be. When your sibling locks you into a role that drains you, a role you never chose. Daniel was the oldest in his family. The strong one. The reliable one. The peacekeeper. For years, he was the one who answered every call, sent money when things got tight, and held the family together through arguments and crises. But it came at a cost. His own well-being. When he finally said, "I need to take a step back," his siblings accused him of abandoning them. "You've always been the strong one," they said. "If you don't help, who will?" That wasn't love. That was obligation dressed up as loyalty. There's an important truth to hold on to here. We are not born to play roles someone else assigned us. We are born free, rational, capable of choosing the life that brings us peace, not pain. And sometimes living freely means stepping out of the role that's been suffocating you for decades. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You don't have to sacrifice your health, your time, or your peace to meet expectations you never agreed to. You have the right to say no, the right to step away, and the right to redefine who you are. Not based on the version of you that made everyone else's life easier, but on the version that lets you finally breathe. You don't need permission to prioritize yourself. You just need the courage to walk away from the roles that keep you small and into the truth that sets you free. Sometimes the most powerful act of self-respect is saying, "This isn't who I am anymore, and I don't owe anyone an explanation for finally choosing me." And yet, even after all that, there's one more kind of betrayal that can quietly chip away at your spirit for years without you even realizing what's happening. It doesn't start with an argument or a harsh word. In fact, it often hides behind good behavior, behind gestures that, on the surface, seem loving and helpful. But when a sibling starts using your parents' love as a competition, when they push you down just to raise themselves up in mom or dad's eyes, that's not family unity. That's rivalry in disguise. Olivia always had a close bond with her mother. They shared stories, memories, even quiet moments that felt like home. But things started to change when her older sister began visiting more often. Not just to spend time with their mother, but to manage impressions. She'd bring flowers, cook dinner, run errands, all while dropping subtle comments like, "I'm just worried about Olivia. She's been so up and down lately." Or, "I miss the old Olivia, don't you?" Each visit was another thread unraveling. Her sister wasn't just stepping up, she was slowly shifting their mother's perception. And Olivia found herself having to explain more, defend more, work harder just to be seen clearly. The warmth that once existed between her and her mom became laced with doubt. And it wasn't until much later that she realized she wasn't being seen at all. She was being compared, measured against an idealized version of her sister that had been carefully and deliberately constructed. There's a quiet kind of cruelty in that, a competition for love dressed up as concern. The truth is more important than appearances. Seeking approval at the expense of honesty and connection is a sign of fear, not strength. And when someone uses you as a stepping stone just to feel like the better child, they're not acting out of love. They're acting out of scarcity, out of insecurity, out of the belief that love is something to be won, not something to be shared. But you, my friend, do not have to play that game. You don't have to perform. You don't have to correct the false image someone else is creating. You don't have to compete for love that should have always been yours to begin with. You get to walk in your truth, speak with clarity, and let your quiet consistency speak louder than their rehearsed performance. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to be the favorite. You just need to be free. And maybe that's the hardest part of all. Accepting that family, while important, is not the ultimate measure of your worth. That sharing blood doesn't automatically mean sharing values, or respect, or even love. That sometimes, to find peace, you have to be willing to let go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. There's a quote that says, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you continue to allow betrayal, resentment, and manipulation into your life just because it comes with a familiar face, your soul begins to take on the weight of that pain. But if you choose boundaries, truth, and dignity, you begin to color your life with peace. That's not cruelty. That's courage. And it's something we often only learn with time. You didn't choose the family you were born into, but you can choose which relationships you nurture. You can choose who gets access to your peace, who gets to speak into your life, who gets a front row seat, and who belongs in the background, no matter what their last name is. Because family isn't about forced closeness. It's about mutual care, mutual respect. And when that isn't there, it's okay. No, it's necessary to walk away. You're not heartless for choosing yourself. You're not ungrateful for recognizing harm. You're not weak for stepping back. In fact, that might be the strongest thing you've ever done. This is your time. Your season of clarity, of peace, of choosing people who lift you, not weigh you down. And if that means drawing a line with someone you once called a brother or sister, then let that line be your starting point, not your ending. You deserve calm in your heart, truth in your relationships, and dignity in every chapter ahead. Because peace is not something you wait for. It's something you build. And maybe, just maybe, that begins with saying the one word you were never taught to say when it came to family: enough.